Good? Om Mangalam Gurudevaya Devi Matriksha Mangalam Mangalam Bhakta Brindevyu Sarva Lokaya Mangalam Om Stapakaya Chadarmasya Sarva Dharma Sarupine Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishnaya Mangalam Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Reva Param Brahman Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Om Sarashiv Om Sarashiva Samarambam Shankarachara Madhyamam Ashmadachara Prayantam Vande Gurum Param Param Vande Gurum Param Param. Jai Ma. Lower this tiny bit. It's on over there, I think. Just a little bit. Glares on the page. That's fine, thank you. No, it's the flickering. That's good. So we've been, the last few weeks, we've been reading from Swami Vivekananda's Bhakti Yoga. We have a few copies of the book if you want to see or purchase. I'm reading from a slightly edited version by Swami Nityananda entitled Vivekananda, the Yogas and Other Works. That includes the 4 yogas and his main talks, his main letters, the most important collection. But it's very beautiful. And so Swamiji, a big part of Swamiji's literature, when he came to the West, he was on the lecture circuit and preaching and lecturing all over America and London. He realized he needed a book. He needed some books, right? But there's no time to sit down and write. Actually, Swamiji is very little. Besides his letters, there's almost nothing that he wrote. We have the Hinduism paper that he read at the Parliament. We're assuming he read that because everybody else, it's a paper on Hinduism. But I don't know whether or not he just had notes and spoke extemporaneously, also I don't know. But so he didn't actually sit down and write books, right? But he had he had stenographers, right, who would write down in very fast shorthand, I guess. That was a method. Nowadays, put it on Facebook Live before somebody had to write everything down, and then later bring it out and edit it. And so from that, the 4 yogas, and he did it consciously, knowing, he's gave a series on classes on Jnana Yoga, a series of classes on Bhakti Yoga, on Karma Yoga, on Raja Yoga, knowing that this could be edited and create. They're very powerful lectures, or how beautiful we have them, but they could be edited and create very nice books. But not like when we always write a book, is that we need a chapter on this, a chapter on that, the way you normally write a book, This was, he may have had some notes, some ideas, but just, he speak on the topic and just kept speaking. And sometimes, I know in the Jnana Yoga book, there's one lecture where he said something that had a great response. He says, and this is Maya, right? Right. So the next night or the next week, when he gave another talk, he continued it. Right, very likely if you look at that, I think it's on Maya or something in Bhakti Yoga, in Jnana Yoga. It's spectacular, right? But he's like, whatever worked, he kept speaking on that. He got responses and like that. So Bhakti Yoga, I've been trying to find out, there's no references in the book where he spoke it. Like the Jnana Yoga, we know this was delivered in London, this was delivered in which hall in San Francisco, like that. But so far I haven't been able to immediately find where he spoke it. But the sections we've done, so he started, just a real quick description. What we've discussed so far, what Swamiji discussed so far, was first defining bhakti. Bhakti as selfless devotion towards Ishvara. Not any devotion, not any type of love is bhakti, although we use the word that way sometimes, and not all devotion, and only if it's given to Ishvara, it can be called bhakti, because bhakti leads to mukti. And devotion towards other things that aren't Ishvara actually, I mean, it'd be a little harsh, but it leads to bondage, naturally, the exact opposite of mukti. So he defines, so the next chapter is the definition of the philosophy of Ishvara. He defined what Ishvara means. Then the purpose of bhakti, the real goal of bhakti is spiritual realization. He described that. And then he went into the nature of, now Ishvara is a very broad word. It means controller, but it's a talk where whenever you see Sri Ramakrishna say God in the gospel, most of the time he's translating, the word he uses Ishvara, right? Sometimes he uses Bhagavan, but almost always Ishvara, right? So that's a general, and actually he described, whenever he's talking about Kali, he uses the same word, Ishvara. So we don't have to say God and Goddess, right? Kali is, for him, God. She has all the functions of creation, sustenance, creation, sustenance, destruction, revealing, and covering. These are the 5 qualities of Ishvara according to the Shastra. And so to Sri Ramakrishna, we don't have to call her Ishwari, although there's a word for that. And we can call her Bhagavan, we don't have to say Bhagavati, although there's a word for that. Just that you can say, oh, Kali is God. We can say like that. We don't have to say Kali is the goddess, because then it's, you can use that language if you want to use a gendered language. But so Ishvara is a very, very huge idea. It's not just, so it's the closest we can, and also it's a description, not a name, right? So like God is a description, the creator, sustainer, destroyer, coverer, and revealer. These are the one who does that. We call that, to that whom does that, we give the title God or Ishvara. But Swami Vivekananda's background of the whole thing, he's presenting Vedanta, right? So it's not like if you ask a Vaishnava, who's Ishvara? Vishnu is Ishvara, and he's a controller. He's the one who's created all the other gods, and sustains those gods, and in the end he'll destroy those gods. He puts those gods into illusion. He brings those gods, gives those gods liberation at the end, right? Or if you asked Shiva, no, Shiva is Ishvara. Right, and actually he's the creator, the sustainer, destroyer, right? So Swami Vivekananda, and today's discussion would be on this topic specifically. Behind everything, the highest idea of Ishvara, actually the highest idea of possible idea is Brahman, the infinite, right? When conceived within the realm of ideas, like infinite creator, infinite power, the source of everything, these are just ideas. Right? When we start giving these descriptions to something that's by definition beyond description, in theological language, we call it Ishvara. But still, what does that mean? How do we know? Have we ever experienced such a being? Can we experience such a being? So then Swamiji describes the nature of the avatar, the embodied teachers and the avatar. And then Guru, right? 2 chapters on Guru. And then we go a little more specified into mantras. Right, and I think last week, or 2 weeks ago, we did on the mantra Om. And then he goes into pratikas and pratimas, symbols that we worship, and images that we worship. Right, so like deities, ideas of God, Shiva lingams, pictures, saints, the Guru, a temple, a holy site, a holy river, a tomb, all the things that are either symbols or images of. So we discussed that last week. So there's the one. So today is called, the chapter is called The Chosen Ideal, or the Ishta-devata. I'm not sure, in the little book it may be given, my version doesn't say, I think it says Ishta-devata or the Chosen Ideal. The next thing to be considered is what we know as Ishta-nishta, right, or devotion to the chosen ideal. Nishta, Ishta, and Nishta. So this is 2 important terms. I may have mentioned in the past that reading this in my room some 5-6 months ago, I had a bit of a because I've always actually not liked this term Ishta. The definition we always give in all the literature, right, is chosen ideal. Right, I never quite liked this title, the chosen ideal. Right, because devata is not ideal. I never quite. It's okay. You're trying to describe it to what is it? What is the Ishta devata, the chosen ideal? All the Ramakrishna literature has. That's the way they've chosen to translate it. And Swamiji here uses this language, and Reading this, I kind of came to a little bit of a perception, or that he's explaining this idea to people who've never heard this idea. Like, I don't like the word ideal for devata, because devata is a deity in my mind, or a god, or a form of god, or a deity, right? Not an ideal, right? We're not worshiping some idea or some idea. It's an idealism. It's a very different term, but to somebody who's never heard this, these are smart people. I mentioned last week, he's speaking new things to smart people that are ignorant in this topic. They're smart, educated, but not, how do you explain these things? So he's using this language. But it's a good, we'll read what he says. Here is his chosen ideal. That's the first time we see this term. The next thing to be considered is what we know as Ishta-nishta, or devotion to the chosen ideal. So nishta means faith or devotion, and ishta here is translating as ideal. What does it mean? One who aspires to be a bhakta, or a devotee, must know that so many opinions are so many ways. This is quoting Sri Ramakrishna, right? As many ideas, all the different ideas are different ways to God. As so many people, there's so many paths like this. He quotes this all the time. His Thakur's famous saying. All the different ideas are different ways to God. He must know that all the various sects of the different religions are the various manifestations of the glory of the same Lord. Right. So, if one wants to be a bhakta, a devotee, one must know that all the different ideas are different paths to God, and all the various sects and the different religions are various manifestations of the same God. Right. So, if that's the definition of being a devotee, you have to know all paths are true, and all the different sects are different manifestations of the same God. It's actually it's extremely liberal and open-minded definition, right? But it's also a very fierce definition, because that means 99% of all religious people aren't devotees, because most people in religions don't believe that the different paths all go to the same goal, right? And they don't believe that all the different sects are different manifestations of the glory of the same God, right? It's an unusual thing, right? So this universal idea is actually not that universal, right? It's a very interesting. So remembering just came to my mind. Swami Ramakrishna has a great story. You may have heard about the different people who go to see an animal under a tree, right? And the way the story in the gospel, it's translated as a man saw an animal under a tree, and he told people, under such and such a tree I saw a red animal. And somebody else says, no, I've also gone under that tree. And that animal, why do you say it's red? That's foolish. It's actually blue. Somebody else says, no. A third person says, no, it's actually green. Somebody else says it's brown. It goes on. You can expand it like that. But there's somebody else who says, who overhears it. Actually, I live under that tree, and I know that animal well. Now, that's the way it's translated. It's not perfectly translated, right, due to perhaps the puritanical time in which the gospel was put into English. Right? It actually says that a man went to defecate under a tree. Right, you go out. We have bathroom, but you go into the garden, you go into under a tree someplace, and you go to the bathroom, pass stool, defecate. The word Thakur would have used like this. And there he saw an animal, right, and came back. Oh, that animal's red. That animal. Somebody else says, no, I also defecate under that tree. Places where people go to the bathroom, the places where people go to the bathroom, right? And so that to me, it's a very different scene, right? Right, and then the person says, that person's a sadhu. A sadhu lives under that tree. So these people are going to the bathroom under a tree, and then arguing about what they saw there, without even noticing that there's a holy man living under that very tree, right? So I think I can only imagine you start attributing meaning to Sri Ramakrishna's that aren't expressed, but I think it's very interesting. In a certain sense, you say most people's opinions about religion is not, what's their knowledge? They go to the bathroom there, where there's actual holy people who live there, right? You see, this is people give their opinion about everything, right? Write anything or put anything down a little bit authoritatively in your Facebook feed, and you'll see all the people going to the bathroom on your wall. It's quite amazing. I read recently some funny thing, or saw some funny comedic thing, that in the Srimad Bhagavatam it says that the demon Kali, not goddess Kali, but the demon Kali, the presiding spirit of the age, of this dark age of Kali Yuga, right? He was one time chastised by King Parikshit, the son of Yudhisthira, this is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, right? And he says, leave my kingdom, right? He says, where is, you're the king of the world. He says, oh, and then go over there. And it's a very famous story. I've talked on this story many, many times, because to me it's a favorite story of mine. But he says, oh, go where there is prostitution, go where there is animal slaughter, go where there is intoxication, go where there is gambling. Like he sent to these impure places, so we know those places are where the demon Kali. But still, he says, you give me no place to live, right? Kali Yuga hadn't started yet in the story, barely, only a few years into it, right? So practically speaking, there's not much of this. So where do you send me? We joke that he was sent to Las Vegas. This is prostitution, meat eating, gambling, and intoxication. It's like the cap of his seat, his uncontested seat of power there. Right, but so in the story it says, oh, then I send you to a fifth place where there's hoarding of gold, right? Because where people hoard gold, these other four things also, like the purpose of Las Vegas is the hoarding of gold, Like this. So that's a famous story, and we can talk on that story. But this person, comedic type of writer, he said, actually, no. When he sent him, he said, okay, I let you. The fifth place you can live is in your comments on Facebook. Right, because all the qualities of Kali Yuga come out fully manifest, right? People, and so sometimes we even use that term. Somebody just, it's like in India they have this term. You sometimes see signs in English. It says "commit no nuisance" on a wall. And what does that mean, right? Actually, it's if the Hindi's there, it's basically don't defecate here. Using stronger, don't urinate here or don't defecate here. You put a sign up. A government offer to put the sign so you know not to go to the bathroom there. So sometimes we see, somebody just crapped on my wall. Or somebody just pissed on my wall. We use kind of joking that language because we put something nice online, and all these people's opinions start and arguments start, and it was great. I take it very much like this. So Thakur is using the same type of image, right? So one person they're arguing about something they saw under a tree where they go to the bathroom, right? So it's already he's setting it up for his critique on people's opinions, perhaps, right? And then they don't notice that there's a man living under the tree. Completely insensitive, right? Somebody who actually, and so that person says, brothers, right? You're all right. All of you are right? Actually, I know that animal well. I live under that tree and I know that animal well. Sometime it's brown, sometime it's red, sometime it's green, sometime it's blue, whatever the language, whatever black, whatever the things are. And sometime I see it has no color at all, right? It says, actually it's a chameleon. This is the animal that changes according to it's an animal, a lizard that can change colors, right? And Sri Ramakrishna says, actually, he's describing that sadhu who lives under a tree as the Paramahansa, one who actually has experience, right? The others have some experience, right? They've seen something. They've seen the lizard or the salamander, and they say, oh, they saw a green animal or a red animal or a blue animal, right? But they don't know it intimately, right? They don't really know it. Right? And they're arguing about something they have very limited knowledge about. But there's somebody who lives there, who spends his whole life meditating upon that animal, knows all its qualities. And sometimes it has so many qualities, sometimes I see it has no qualities, it has no color. Right? But this line, actually, my brothers, you're all right. How liberal that is. To say all these are people who are arguing about something, but actually what is he saying? You're all wrong. It's an interesting thing. By saying you're all right, it says, oh, this is a brown animal. Actually, you're right, it's brown. And it's this, and it's that, and it's that, and many other things also. It's giving people's value, giving people respect and value for their limited understanding, right? But that limited understanding actually is wrong, right? If you're making an absolute statement about limited information, you're going to be wrong. If you're making a limited statement, like, one way that we see, the way I see the infinite God is like this, right? That's a humble statement, right? It's like I don't know everything, and there may be many other ways, but the way I see it, my experience, and my belief is this, right? That's a very simple thing. Another place in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, it says that everybody says my religion is right, and all the other religions are wrong, right? That's a completely ignorant statement. How do you know your religion is right, and how do you know other people's religions are wrong, right? He says a little bit of humility would say, even if you believe that, it says, I think my religion is right. That's what most people actually say when they say that. I think my religion is right, or I hope it's right, and I don't know about other people's religions. That's a little more humble, a little more honest, right? Actually, I don't know much about mine, but I think, I hope, and I believe it's true, and other people's I don't know, right? But then the Paramahansa would say, my religion is right, and everyone other religion is right also, right? But bigger than they think, perhaps, bigger than any of us think, right? So this is the background. Swami Vivekananda is a child of Sri Ramakrishna. Right? These stories are constant, these examples are always in his head. Now he's presenting those ideas to a new audience. So his big statement, a devotee sees all paths lead to God, and all the different sects and religions and ideas are aspects of the glory of the one true God. Right? That's a devotee. So liberal, so broad, right? But actually it's a very tiny definition of a devotee. How many people feel this way? Right. It's not, Hindus think, not all Hindus, Sri Ramakrishna. He made these stories not because he was trying to fight against Islam, Christianity, and Buddhism. It was internal struggles between Shaivites and Vaishnavas and Vaitans and Vishishta-Dvaitans and Dvaitans and Ganapatyas. The sectarian fights within Hinduism. These statements are primarily being made. Right. So it's not just true. Nowadays we'd say, Hindus believe this. But that's actually very largely because of the preaching of Swami Vivekananda, the ideals of Sri Ramakrishna that have percolated within Hindu society, and especially the Hinduism that has come to America and spread in America. It's a background because of this. But it's exactly a very big statement. The real devotee is somebody who sees this. Right? Yet few indeed are those who are at once possessed of the extensive sympathy and power of appreciation as well as an intense love. I'm sorry, I skipped a second. I'll read that sentence. One who aspires to be a bhakta, a devotee, must know that so many opinions are so many views. He must know that all the various sects and the different religions are all various manifestations of the glory of the same God. Then he gives a quote. They call you by so many names. They divide you, as it were, by different names. Yet in each one there is to be found your omnipotence, all your power. You reach the worshipper through all of these. There are no special times for your worship, so long as the soul has intense love for you. You are so easy of approach. It is my misfortune that I cannot love you. Now this is a philosophically dissected version of Chaitanya's prayer called the Shishashtakam, one of the verses. I should have, when I noticed it, I should find, I can get it and go over it, but it's not a class of Shishashtakam. But it's a verse that Prabhupada translated, Swami Prabhupada translated, infinite are thy names, O Lord, in each and every one thy glory resides. No times are set, no rites are needful for the chanting of thy name. Right? How huge then is my wretchedness, who find in this empty life and heart no devotion to thy name. Right? So something like, I may be mixing, but it says that you have infinite are thy names, O Lord. Right? You have so many names, right? And in each and every one, thy power, thy infinite power, you're fully manifested, all your power in each name, right? Yet, so, and on top of that, there's no, if one simply says in the divine name, what's the time requirement? Any time. Is that okay? And what's the time requirement? What are the restrictions? What rituals are required? Right? Certain things require rituals in special times. We have to look at the almanac and the exact moment when to do something. Right? What's the titi of the moon? It's an auspicious moment, an inauspicious moment to do a wedding, to do something, to start a voyage, to start a business. We look at all these things, right? And all these complicated, we have to bathe and put tea like that, and then be properly initiated and chant this and do that. For all the different pujas we're doing that are done, there's a lot of rules and regulations concerning time and circumstance and place, right? But for chanting God's name, of which there's infinite number, all of which have infinite power. That's what this prayer says, right? There's no restriction, right? So actually, that one statement, one God has infinite names, all of which have infinite power, and there's no restriction for when and how you chant them, right? If that's the case, today itself could be the day of our enlightenment, right? You immediately, but yet, how huge, the way Prabhupada says, how huge and is my wretches who find in this empty life and heart, no devotion to thy name. Yet remains that we remain the same. Even if we believe that, we don't do anything about it. right? We don't, it's like we have obstructing karmas, you would say, rather than wretchedness. Let's not give it the same emotional tinge, right? We have obstructing karmas and tendencies and insensitivities. The next chapter go into how to overcome those insensitivities, and obstructing karmas by purification, right? The mind. In other words, saying this, in this, our mind and heart have become polluted, as it were, and therefore we don't have devotion, right? Because only in a pure mind and heart can devotion rise. And out of devotion, you call out to that one God whose names are infinite, who are powerful, and which there's no rules and regulations for the chanting of. But only by regular sadhana of chanting God's one of God's infinite names, His infinite power at any time and in space, is a heart and mind purified, and therefore awakening the love for that very name. So this is a tricky thing. We chant God's name, we do spiritual practices out of devotion, right? But it's by doing them that we get devotion. Because sadhana, this is we'll go into this as we progress. There's sadhana bhakti and vaidhi bhakti. Raghunaga Bhakti, Vaidhi Bhakti and Raghunaga Bhakti, or Sadhana Bhakti and Param Bhakti. Narada Muni makes this description, Sri Ramakrishna gives this description in the Kathamrita. Especially in the conversation with Vijay Krishna Goswami, he goes in extreme detail. In the Kathamrita and the Gospel, you can read that section. That in the beginning, our devotion is shown by it, our faith and devotion and hope and sincerity is shown by, or demonstrated, or manifest as sadhana. We doing proper spiritual practices. We get, the mantra that the Guru gives us, we practice sincerely, like this, We go on pilgrimages, we go to temples, we hear satsangs, we do japa, we do kirtan, all the things we do, right? The goal of which is the devotion that would make you all the time chant God's name, do kirtan, contemplate the scriptures, live in a holy place, The goal is devotion, and the path is the path of devotion, right? So, you reach your worshipper through all of these, yet there is no special time for your worship, so long as the soul has intense love for you. You are so easy of approach, it is my misfortune I cannot love you. End quote. Not only this, the bhaktas must take care not to hate or even criticize. The bhakta must take care not to hate or even criticize those radiant sons of light who are the founders of the various sects. He must not even hear of them spoken ill of. So this is another big statement, so we joking with edginess behind our consciousness because we're still young on the spiritual path, and and the edges haven't been polished out yet, right? Hopefully we progress more and more. But we joke sometimes that it's like, oh, all religions are equally true. That's a big statement. That's almost like the beginning statement we learn when we come to Hinduism or to Vedanta or to the Ramakrishna tradition, or like often that's kind of a background. It says, yet we find that all the religions that we say are equally true all have as one of their fundamental doctrines that they alone are true, and all other religions are not only false, but actually dangerous and maybe even evil, right? And maybe soul damning, not dangerous, right? So we sometimes joke that all religions are equally true, especially ours, that says all religions are equally true, right? So this is that thing, a real to view. I said like how liberal this opening statement of Swamiji was, that a devotee sees all religions as true, right? But even more so, even he's careful not to criticize any of the great founders and saints and prophets and of the different sects and different religions, even those that say that view is wrong, right? And what an incredible generosity of heart, right? I remember one time Abbot George gave a talk in Vedanta Society in Hollywood, right? And he says that the missionaries that came to India, they didn't preach this way. They preach the exact opposite, right? He gave a few examples. We don't have to, if you know anything about the missionary movements in India, they're pretty fierce, right? And very denigrating to the religion. So it's hundreds of years of people. The message, the good news is that, independent of what the religion teaches, but especially your religion's wrong, it's founded by illusion and error and evil, and if you follow it, you'll go to hell, and you no chance to go to heaven, and that's why you guys are poor, and that's why we're controlling you. And I mean, it got extended, you mixing Calvinism and all that type of stuff into it, and they did a big number. And so then finally, Swami Vivekananda comes to the West as a preacher, a missionary of Hinduism, right? And then Swami Shardananda, Swami Turiyananda, Swami Abhedananda, Swami Trigunatitananda, Swami Nirmalananda, these direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, right, came as preachers of Vedanta, right, and they give very interesting, their statement, when they got a chance to respond, and respond in kind perhaps, right, was, your religion is true, right, your religion is God's revelation, right, and if you follow it properly, you'll attain the same goal that we attain in our religion. Right, it's very interesting. So Abbot George made a comment on this. He says he takes it as a highest example of the Christian principle of charity, which is returning good for evil. Right. So I thought that was an interesting way of looking at it. He responded like that. So Swami Vivekananda, it doesn't mean that you say that that every foolish, hateful thing in a religion is true. Right. Then we become quite foolish ourselves. Right. The religion is true. I mean, so how did Sri Ramakrishna say it? Sri Ramakrishna said that anybody who's sincere, who has sincere longing for God, no matter what the religion, right? That's how he worded it, right? It will find God. So true in what's in, not the doctrinal things. There's a lot of foolishness in every religion, including Hinduism. I mean, I can take a principle of Vedanta and some Western religion and show the logical absurdity of it. You know, that that's not our goal, but we can take anything and I can show the logical, philosophical, theological, logical. You take it to the extreme, you can show the absurdity of almost anything. Some things are easier than others, right? But so it's not that every foolish thing is true or every hateful thing is true, right? What does it mean by because like the person saying, no, the salamander is that animal is red or the animal is black, and it's only red. The red part's true. The only red is not true in that statement, right? But the only person who can see that the red part's true and the only red part true is not true is somebody that knows it more intimately. That requires realization, right? And so no, we don't have realization, so we may not be able to say that, but we've at least trying to walk in the footsteps of those who have that realization, and therefore we're coming with that new perspective. We're starting with the perspective like that the founders were divine. They spoke a divine truth. Those who follow that divine truth will attain realization, liberation, whatever their spiritual goal if they're sincere. So we have to know how we mean it when we say all religions are true, you know. And what does it mean not to criticize? It doesn't mean to accept any stupid statement, right? Including ones that we make. It should be challenged, right? It's not on Facebook, but they can be challenged on it's a respectful dialogue. What does it mean? I think a lot of it is incredible generosity of spirit and of mind, right? Seeing the good in everything, and because we're trying to find, knowing that other people, we hope, are trying to find, right? And as God reacted out of mercy and gave ways for us to find that truth, perhaps the same God, out of mercy, has given paths and revelations to others. We can only hope. We should only hope, actually. It'd be very disappointing if all of a sudden we realize, actually, you're lucky, you're in the right religion, you got in, but there's other people, they're all damned. That could be very disappointing. But, you know, it's like, but some people like going, I knew it. I knew they were wrong. You know, that's, right. But so how is it that this is true? Swamiji continues. Very few indeed are those who are once possessed the extensive sympathy and the power of appreciation as well as an intense love. So this means those how few of them are so broad in understanding and sympathy and view, right? But possess an intense love, right? So that's the problem. This is one of the reasons why religions become sectarian, fanatical so easily, right? Especially the devotional forms of religion. Right? Because love usually means you love somebody, something, one thing, right? And sometimes it means at the exclusion of some, like if you get married to somebody, or you're dating somebody, usually it means like, I love you at the exclusion of everybody else. I have a relationship with you, but not anybody else. That's usually what it means. I mean, we can stretch definitions now, right? But that's the general meaning. And if you feel like, and to the one being loved, you should love only me. If you love somebody else, then that's not, your love is not pure, right? It's not authentic, right? And I mean, how many marriages break and how many relationships we could go from love to, we go from love to hate in one conversation sometimes, right? How easy it is, right? You know, that's the thing. And so that's the normal, in the regular sense of the world, love often means exclusive, right? You can say, oh, general, I love mankind. I love, you know, that's a different type of thing. When you're talking about this type of religious love, it's usually very intense. And the intensity of love required for realization, liberation, Swamiji says, is bhakti, param bhakti, intense, exclusive, all-consuming, overwhelming, focused love, right? Right. To have that and still be broad and generous and appreciative, right? That's an unusual thing. Another place, Swamiji says, like, if you have a very wide, you have a certain amount of water, and you take that water and you make a very broad river for it to flow in. Beautiful, a big, broad river, but usually it becomes very shallow. The water is spread all along the thing, right? If you take it and you channelize it, right? It becomes very powerful, right? And very deep, but narrow. Right. So generally, the making of something deep is the very act of narrowing it, to channel it, right? But it may be necessary. You channel it, you give something power, depth and power, like that. And you spread it out and make it very broad, it becomes weak. It becomes shallow, right? So this is the normal thing. Because there are such situations. Perhaps you've seen during flood season. Right, where, you know, in Allahabad, you know, we at the Sangam during the rainy season, the river is 1.25 miles across, right, and very deep and moving very fast. It can flood the city easily. Right, people die every year during the flood season in Allahabad, right, right. So there are situations where it's very deep and very broad, right. And so Swami Vivekananda said Sri Ramakrishna was both broad and deep. Right, and then he gave a simple example. This is perhaps an overly simplification of Christian religious traditions, but you can get an example to illustrate a point, not to define a tradition, right, or disparage a tradition. He says that the Catholic and the Orthodox Christians, they have they're not very broad, right, but they have depth. As a result, they make saints. I mean, right, and then you have the broader American Protestant traditions of his time. He says they're much broader, right? We're priesthood of believers, and, you know, there's other very broad things of God manifest in this world, and like that, very broad, very liberal, very beautiful, right? But beautiful, but not deep. It doesn't have the spiritual intensity and power to make saints or to give realization. Perhaps this is, once again, these are examples, not definitions, right? But that broadness and depth and focus is what is needed. Swami Vivekananda said that this is our duty. We should teach this and practice this. We should be broad and deep, right? Because this is the type, we don't want to... anyways, we'll continue. We find as a rule that liberal and sympathetic sects lose their intensity and religious feeling. And in their hands, religion is likely to degenerate into a kind of political, social club life. You can see many religions, many churches are like this. They're good. There's nothing wrong with social work and community and camaraderie and all the things that we look for. These are also human needs, and we fulfill those needs in a sacred way, in a religious way. Religion should be able to satisfy those needs also, right? But the original purpose of religion, Sri Ramakrishna said, is to know we've been discussing this as a topic here at Kali Mandir, our morning coffees, right? We may have mentioned it I think we mentioned it last week also, is that that the definition of religion by Sri Ramakrishna and the perennial philosophers is one of the functions of religion is to know the difference between the real and the unreal, right? Or God and the world, or God and mammon. Right, or the permanent and the temporary, right? Not a judgment of the temporary, and it doesn't necessarily declare it as useless and sinful. Not that. We have to know what's the permanent in the world of change, right? And so that's the first thing. It has to have a philosophical, clear, doctrinal, whatever view of the real, right? Of the real, the unchanging, the eternal, the timeless, the infinite, right? And it should have a technique or path to attain that infinite, right? This is intense real religion, philosophically or by practice, right? And I think Shuan said that the orthodoxies, groups that have these two very well defined, right? If you lose that, then it's like, if you don't have a very clear understanding or view of the eternal, then what becomes the focus? The changing, right? Which is not bad. The changing is also, we can also see it's a manifestation of God, right? And that these are true religious statements, spiritual statements, right? But it's like, so we do good to the world. That's good, right? We live happy, successful, financially independent lives. There's prosperity gospel on TV, right? You believe, and then God gives you the proof of your belief is blessing. Blessing means material happiness in this world, right? It takes the focus of the divine away from the infinite, away from the eternal, into the changing and the effervescent, right? So this is the danger, right? So if you don't have that intense religious feeling, the liberal and sympathetic sects lose their intensity religious feeling, and in their hands, religion is likely to degenerate into a kind of political, social club life. On the other hand, intensely narrow sectarians, while displaying a very commendable love for their own ideal, are seen to have acquired every particle of that love by hating everyone who is not exactly of the same opinion as themselves, right? The sectarian groups, they say they have intense love, but we wish we had that intensity of devotion. But it seems that they get that intensity, every drop, every speck of that intensity, by hating others who don't think like them, right? Another place Swami Vivekananda said, it's like feeling tall by cutting other people's heads off, right? You can feel tall by being tall, or you can, until then, right? This is painfully exemplified in a scene from the Mahabharata. Here, I'm not supposed to on a raised platform make you feel bad, make you lose faith in the characters like Arjun and Yudhisthira and Dronacharya, but I'm going to make you lose faith in Yudhisthira and Dronacharya. There's a scene where Dronacharya is the archer guru, right? He promises Arjuna he'll make him the best archer, the supreme archer in all the land, right? But independently, there's another sub-story where there is a tribal, right, Adivasi who went to Drona, please teach me. No, you're of a low caste or of an outcast, so I won't teach you. And so he made an image of Dronacharya and practicing that image out of devotion. It's a story. The real story is about Guru Bhakti, right? And practiced in such a way where he practiced daily and became an expert archer. And in a big competition where where the Pandavas and other people were competing for archery, this tribal comes out and he shows superior archery, right? And Arjuna gets very upset, right? Sorry, I glorify Arjuna, but this is an important scene because this is the complicated nature of excellence, right? He went to his teacher. Of course, he's a young boy at the time. We'll give him that, right? We're all foolish in our young age. He says, "You promised that I would be the best archer, right? So it should be." The response is, if somebody's better, I should get better at it, right? But instead it's like, get rid of him, right? If he's no longer, so there's a story where Drona again goes to his name, I'll give you the title, Eklavya, a very famous person, and tells him, who taught you archery? He says, you did. How did I rejected you. No, I established your murti, I did puja to you, I practiced on you, you taught me. He says, if it's me, then I demand my dakshina, my fee. Yes, Guruji, tell me. He says, give me your right thumb. Immediately cut off the thumb. Eklavya means one thumb, right? And so, of course, he would never. So that, anyways, so he made it so Arjuna would be the best archer. Very nice story, right? Yeah, but that's one of the things. It's an example of this. We become great by reducing others. We do this, but actually, there's a. If you take a step back, I don't just leave it there. Everybody, don't start reading your Bhagavad Gita's or anything, right? our Guruji Swami Omananda, he gave a very deep understanding of this scene, right? A couple important scenes. I won't go into all of them. The scene of Sita banishment, and of Aklavya and a few others, right? He says actually when Drona, he says this is by the commentary of the saints, right, ancient and modern, on this scene. When Drona saw that, how did this person, there's no, in this situation, the political and the social situation at the time, Arjuna has to be the best, right? He's a prince. There's a situation where that has to be, right? It's also true that nobody will ever honor Eklavya as an outcast, as a tribal, right? It's actually illegal for some, and you have to understand the principles at the time of the Mahabharata, right? Somebody doing archery that's not in the right caste or the right varna, to use a better term, or not the modern term, right? Right? It's actually illegal. He's breaking the law, the religious law of the land, right? Right. So he'd be not only would he would never be honored, he'd be punished, right? So actually, the best archer in the world at that point, besides the teacher, right, the best would be punished or minimally never be honored, right? But here we are today. How many years ago was that? If we take the dating traditional, it's over 5,000 years ago. Right, and here I am, a Mexican kid in Laguna Beach, right, talking about Eklavya, right, that out of his devotion to his guru, even the guru that didn't accept him, right, he became the best archer in the world, right? So what an interesting thing, right? So Guruji says actually that this was Drona, being extremely intelligent and compassionate, did the one thing that could guarantee that he be remembered forever as the greatest archer, as the greatest example of archery and of Guru Bhakti, right? But who looks bad in the story, right? Arjuna looks bad, his chief disciple, right? But even worse, Drona looks bad. What type of guru would ask for the thumb and ruin due to caste and all these considerations, right? So think about it. He sacrificed his own name, right? His own fame for all eternity. 1,000 years later, people still criticize Dronacharya for his asking for the thumb of Eklavya. And they also criticize Arjuna, right, for his being young and petty at the time, right? And they glorified Eklavya, right? So he did exactly the right thing, right? I'm just trying to save the story. It's from before it did, but the story, the idea came to my mind about this cutting off people's heads to look tall. On the other hand, intensely narrow sectarians, while displaying a very commendable love for their own ideals, are seen to have acquired every particle of that love by hating everyone who is not exactly of the same opinion as themselves. Would be God that this world were full of men who were as intense in their love as they were worldwide in their sympathies. That's Swamiji's ideal. It's Ramakrishna's ideal and Swami Vivekananda's ideal. This should be our ideal. But such are far and few between. If only the world was full of such beings. But there seem to be very few. Right? Yet we know that it is practical to educate large numbers of human beings in the ideal of a wonderful blending of both the breadth and intensity of love. And the way to do that is by this path of Ishta-nishta. So how to do that, then we require this idea of Ishta and Nishta. So Ishta, what does the word Ishta, it comes from a Sanskrit, it means like desired, favorite, beloved, cherished, respected, right? That's called, that's the term Ishta. And Nishta means like faith, steadiness, devotion. These type of words are there. So Ishta-nishta means a faith or a steadiness or a focus on that which is most favorite, the beloved, the chosen, the liked, cherished, like that, preferred, right? So Ishta-nishta means that, so out of that infinite, so the form of God that we have this intense, that Swamiji is hoping that we have the intense, overwhelming, passionate love for, is just the form that we love most. Right, not the only form. Think about it. It's actually not a huge thing, but it's so rare. The view that the one we love is just the one that we love. It's the form that we love most, the form that we prefer. Right? Sometimes it's due to an accident of birth. It's like the form that we're trained in, that we grew up in. I love Jesus because, I don't know anything else but Jesus. Or I love Krishna, my family is Vaishnavas, I grew up this way, so I love Krishna. Right? But still, it's not I love Krishna and hate Jesus. Or love Jesus and hate Krishna. Right? No, the one I love, the form of the one I love most is Krishna or Jesus or Kali. Right? What a beautiful thing. So simple, but huge. So actually this idea of Ishta-nishta is a very huge thing. It's a solution, Swamiji says. Every sect of their own religion, every sect of every religion presents only one ideal of its own to mankind. But the eternal Vedantic religion opens to mankind an infinite number of doors for ingress into the inner shrine of divinity. Vedanta opens an infinite number of doors into the shrine of divinity and places before humanity an almost inexhaustible array of ideals, there being in each of them a manifestation of the Eternal One. Right? Infinite and unimaginable, inexhaustible array of ideals. Right? Each of them a manifestation of the Eternal One. With the kindest of solicitude, Vedanta points out to aspiring men and women the numerous roads hewn out of the solid rock of the realities of human life by the glorious sons, or human manifestations of God, in the past and in the present, and stands with outstretched arms to welcome all, to welcome even those that are yet to be, to that home of truth and the ocean of bliss, wherein the human soul, liberated from the net of Maya, can transport itself with perfect freedom and with eternal joy. These are the huge, beautiful statements of Swamiji. Jayama. I love it. He points out the human beings, men and women, the numerous roads hewn out of the solid rock of the realities of human life by the glorious sons, meaning the founders of the mystics and the avatars and the prophets and the saviors. Right? They've carved out of the solid rock of material life, the realities of life, right? Paths to God. Right? That also gives you we become very forgiving of if the paths are a little crooked or a little harsh or a little rough. It's not an easy to make a road through solid rock is not easy, and so we praise that. Just see, even in this situation, such a great saint, such a great manifestation, messenger of God, created a way for people even there. Right? It's a beautiful idea. Stand without. They respect and stand with outstretched arms for all who come in the future also. In other words, it's not not the final one, right? We respect all in the past. We respect those now and in the future. How many more ways God will make? How many more manifestations, right? Even Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda said, the path of the teachings of Vedanta that I'm presenting will be I've given enough for 10,000 years. He said like that. He said, well, what will happen after 10,000 years? Oh, definitely the Spirit will come down and another Vivekananda will come up and give something new for the good of the world. Right? So that's a big, so it's not like, oh, this is the final thing. And no. There'll be thousands of Vivekanandas will come and gone. Right? There's bubbles in his Christ the Messenger talk, incredible talk by Swami Vivekananda, where he says that there's an infinite ocean. How many waves have come and gone? How many bubbles? These are all the avatars and saints and founders of the star. They come and go, infinite. So the one that we're on, that's important. But that will go. Somebody else another one will come. To welcome even those that are yet to be, to that home of truth and the ocean of bliss, wherein the human soul, liberated from the net of Maya, may transport itself with perfect freedom and with eternal joy. Bhakti Yoga, therefore, lays on us this imperative command not to hate or deny any of the various paths that lead to salvation. Yet the growing plant must be hedged round to protect it until it has grown into a tree. The tender plant of spirituality will die if exposed too early to the action of a constant change of ideas and ideals. This is, of course, another famous teaching of Sri Ramakrishna. He says that just like we have a tiny little sapling, right? If you just put it there, what will happen? I mean, we sometimes we grow in our little kit. We begin to grow carrots or cucumbers or something. It takes weeks to get a sapling, and it gets this big, and then finally it's big enough. Let's put it. Now we can put it in the garden, in the ground, right? And then we come out the next day, and they're all eaten. One rabbit. In the beginning, one grasshopper can lay waste a month worth of growing, right? Later, a rabbit or the deer come in, and so we have. Or a gopher comes and pulls it from below. So now we have cages and raised beds and then screens on top. At a certain point, like going, it's big enough, we can take the cage down. We can take the lid off, right? Something nibbles on it, it's not going to kill the plant, right? They can take a few leaves, no problem, right? We can share, right? When they're so small, one bite, the whole thing is gone, right? So Sri Ramakrishna said, when a little plant of spirituality, if you don't put a fence around it, a cow will come and eat it, or a goat will come and eat it, right? So, well, it's true, we should be very broad, but we have to protect at the same time our devotion, our faith, right? Otherwise it'll be eaten by these stray animals. Then later says Ramakrishna, when the plant grows into a tree, right? To use then those same goats and the same cows will take shelter under it for shade. In the beginning they destroy it. Later he said you can tie an elephant to it, nothing will happen, right? You tie a horse to a tree. Right, but in the beginning you have to protect the tree from horses, from elephants, from goats, from cows, right? So the tender plant of spirituality will die if exposed too early to the actions of a constant change of ideas and ideals. Many people, in the name of what they called religious liberalism, may be seen feeding their idle curiosity with a continuous succession of different ideas. With them, hearing new things grows into a kind of disease, a sort of religious drink mania. They want to hear new things just by the way of getting a temporary nervous excitement. And when one such exciting influence has had an effect on them, they are ready for another. Right? Religion with these people is a sort of intellectual opium eating. And there it ends. Right? So that's a danger. Of course, in the beginning, sometimes people ask, like the process, like, well, you start, people, how do you get interested? Like, well, you start reading broadly. You have spiritual interests. You study different religions. This is a general way, in a modern way. So you start very broadly, right? But then you find something that interests you, a method or a saint or a deity or a system or something like that you resonates with you. You begin to focus on that. It doesn't mean now the others are hated and destroyed and fought against, right? But you eventually, naturally, you become focused. If you don't become focused, then nothing, you never learn anything. Another way Sri Ramakrishna describes it is like if you want a well and you start digging, right? And there's water there, so I start digging. But then you start after a little bit then going, but there's also water over there. Somebody told me, right? So let me dig over there instead. And you dig over there. It's like, but actually, let's dig over here, right? So in order to find water, a couple things are necessary. There actually has to be water. So you have to dig in a real place, in a real spiritual tradition, right? Right. Not any. And the other thing is you have to dig long enough that you get water, right? And if you say, well, but I want to dig everywhere. Okay, you can tell people, then you can dig everywhere, but first get water and then dig some other place. That's what Sri Ramakrishna didn't practice all religions. He practiced one religion. Right, and when he had realization, he looked for that same realization in the next practice, in the next tradition. He didn't practice everything at one time. He wasn't synchronistic in his approach. That's the word. I think it's the word, right? He had complete focus on his approach, right? Become all-consuming. If there's water here, I'm going to find it here. I've heard there's water here, right? Ramprasad found water here. I must find water here. But then, after finding water, then he'd look, well, they also say there's water there. But the thing is, that's after realization. Then we can see, right? Until then, we should say, okay, there's water everywhere, fine. There's water in many places, but this is where I want, this is where I'm digging, right? That's called Ishta-nishta, right? Or fencing, so eventually you have to focus. Not focus by hating everything else or disparaging, but And not being and by appreciating everything else, not being so open-minded and so that you don't do anything, right? I've heard, I mean, maybe you've heard, but I've in our little corner of the temple world, right? Oh yeah, I don't go to temples because God's everywhere, right? Or so that's interesting, you know. Swami Vivekananda quoted that equivalent last week and the week before. We say that two types of people don't worship God, right? The fool and the Paramahansa, right? Two types of people don't worship the avatar, the fool or the Paramahansa. Two types of people don't go to temple, the fool or the Paramahansa. We can put in this type of thing, right? Because the fool doesn't know any better, doesn't know anything, right? And the Paramahansa has already gone beyond that. We found the one behind everything. Until then, you have to do something. You worship the avatar, you follow a tradition, you go to it and you do the sadhana, right? Right? Somebody who's a siddha doesn't have to do sadhana. Two types of people don't do sadhana. Those who aren't interested and those who've attained. Until then, we should be, until we have attainment, we shouldn't be just in the category of ignorant. You know, we're aspiring, we're practicing something, focusing on something. So, and sometimes then a new religion has come, and that is everything is true, right? That's the background, Swamiji says, to bhakti. But bhakti requires focus on one thing, with recognition that it's everywhere and it's come in different ways and all the different paths. This incredible open-minded and generous-heartedness. So you don't get that the stain of selfishness and closed-mindedness and fanaticism that every fanatical statement reeks of the opposite of realization. So we're working against ourselves if we think this way. So how to get that focus without fanaticism, the depth without the breadth with depth, right? But sometimes a new religion, everything is true, therefore nothing's true, right? God's become the world, therefore the world's fine. Right, doesn't matter what I do. Right, everything's divine. Therefore, you can know the idea that another danger we never get depth. Well, it's true. Somebody thinking, there's water everywhere if we dig. Right, that's beautiful. What a beautiful, open-minded idea. Right, and somebody else are going, there's no water anywhere but here. And that's where I'm digging. That sounds weird. We don't like to hear such statements, right? All the other people are evil and fools and fallen and damned even. Right? They'll never get water ever, ever. Right? There's no chance. All right, right? And we're taking their property, you know, whatever. And re-educating their children, you know, whatever. You know, like you can keep adding. Right? That's not. But at least they're digging someplace. That's the point, right? So we have to dig someplace. The idea that everything everywhere, that's true, but it's not. It won't lead to realization. You have to dig someplace, right? There is another sort of man, says Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna. Now, Thakur Swamiji is quoting Sri Ramakrishna. There is another kind of man. So this is the opposite of one who digs, who doesn't dig anywhere, who just collects ideas, right? Neither fanatical nor so broad that and dissipated that he doesn't attain anything, doesn't practice anything. What is this other kind of man? Who is like a pearl oyster of the story. Now this is not the scientific way that a oyster is made. This is a mythological story of how oysters are made, right? How pearls are made from oysters, right? The pearl oyster leaves its bed at the bottom of the sea and comes up to the surface to catch the rainwater when the star Swati is in the ascendant. So every 40-something days, there is a Swati. This is nakshatra, right? The Swati is a very auspicious nakshatra, and also has mythological meaning. But so he lives in the bottom of the water, of the ocean, and he swims up when he thinks, it's time, right? The Swati this auspicious moment has come. And he waits. Hopefully it will rain that day. And he waits with his mouth, with the shell open. Right, and maybe, just maybe, one drop of rain will come during that nakshatra, that ascendant star, right? And catches that one. Not any rain will do. Not anything will do. It has to be rainwater, and it has to be rainwater during Swati. And he catches that. In other words, a very rare and precious thing. That's what his story is trying to say, right? because actually we know probably a piece of sand gets in, and because the scientific definition is we can read through the thing that religion is just an irritation and our attempt to deal with irritating dirt in our consciousness of but this is not the way the story is being done. Takes a drop of water when the Swati is an ascendant. It floats about on the surface of the sea with its shell wide open until it has succeeded in catching a drop of the rainwater, and then it dives deep down into the seabed and there rests until it has succeeded in fashioning a beautiful pearl out of that raindrop. So this is the opposite of that. Somebody who takes the real process, takes something precious, and then dive deep with that thing. This is the equivalent of getting the mantra or some special thing, and practicing it secretly, deeply, intensely. Right? This is what I think. This is indeed the most poetical and forcible way in which the theory Ishta-nishta has ever been put. Right? Swamiji said this is the best description of Ishta-nishta ever spoken, right, by Sri Ramakrishna. Ishta-nishta, or devotion to one ideal, is absolutely necessary for the beginner in the practice of religious devotion. He must say with Hanuman in the Ramayana, so this is an important verse. I misquoted this verse a few times. And I said, if I waited, I would have turned the page a few more times, I would have gotten the verse right. But the point was still well made, if not the quote not perfectly delivered. So he says that he must say with Hanuman in the Ramayana, though I know that the Lord of Shri and the Lord of Janaki are both manifestations of the same Supreme Being, yet my all in all is the lotus-eyed Rama. So this is a scene where I think maybe Vishnu, Hanuman went to go see Vishnu, if I remember. This is where I may be messing up the quote a little bit. And Vishnu, realizing out of also his devotion for the peculiarities and the heart's desire of the devotee, right, took on, he loves Ram. He has Ishta-nishta. He's one-pointed. Who's more focused? Hanuman is always the example of perfect devotion to one ideal, right? Lord Ram, nothing else, right? He thinks nothing else but Ram. Never thinks of anything but Ram. So Vishnu immediately switched and took on the form of Lord Ram, right, in Vaikuntha. And so when Hanuman got there, if I remember the story right, he says, Lord, you don't need to do this. I know that the Lord of Shri and the Lord of Janaki are the same. I know that Vishnu, the Lord of Lakshmi, and that Rama, the Lord of Sita, Rama, the Lord of Sita, are the same person. They're the same Godhead, right? Still, I love Ram. Right? I know that they're the same, but actually I still love Ram. This is the ideal of Ishta-nishta, right? I know that it's the one God. Still, my favorite is Ram, right? That's the great statement. Or is said by the sage Tulsidas, take the sweetness of all, sit with all, and take the name of all. Say yea, yea, but keep your seat firm. Right? In other words, you can even go other religions, other traditions, other kirtans, to visit other gurus, other lineages, celebrate other people's festivals like that, and sit with them and practice with them like that. But still, keep your own seat firm. Still, you have your own relationship. Another example, Sri Ramakrishna gives wonderful examples of everything. The knots of thousands of years of theological problems are removed with a simple story. He says a couple things. The one I'm thinking, he says the wife in the Hindu home, she serves all the members of her family carefully, right? Out of love and respect and devotion, she serves her brother-in-law, brothers-in-law, sisters-in-law, the father-in-law. Right? This is the idea that the woman moves into it's a story of an Indian context. But she still has a very different relationship with her husband. Right? That the relationship she has with her husband is not the same she has with her brother-in-laws. Yet she serves them all with sincerity. Right? So we serve God and we see and serve all the forms, all the traditions, all the manifestations, right? But still we have a special and unique relationship with our Ishta, the form that we've developed our relationship with. Unique relationship. Then, if the devotional aspirant is sincere, out of this little seed will come a gigantic tree. This was this little tree, a little tree of devotion, a little tree of interest, a little tree of the initiation, or something they call the Bhakti Bija, the seed of devotion, right? That seed of devotion has to grow into Bhakti Lata, right? It means a creeper of devotion, right? That's a common symbol or metaphor in Vaishnava Tantra, right? Describing how to protect that, how that plant of devotion, the creeper of devotion grows. And you want it to grow into a tree, a banyan tree, that grows and spreads and becomes strong, right? To which other creepers can tangle and give an unlimited amounts of seeds. A banyan tree comes from a seed this big, and it will produce in its adult life, right, billions and billions of banyan seeds. You think about it, that's a very small, this little bit of devotion, if treated properly, it's the right attitude, unlimited good, Swamiji says. Then if the devotional aspirant is sincere, out of this little seed will come a gigantic tree, like the Indian banyan, sending out branch after branch and root after root to all sides, till it covers the entire field of religion. This will be true. Thus will the true devotee realize that he who is his own ideal in life is worshipped in all ideals, by all sects, under all names, and through all forms. It's a very big statement. Tremendous statement. I scribbled something in my notes that I forgot to mention. I'll just mention quickly because it's an important. The idea of the Ishtadevata it developed from a particular. Really, the idea comes from the Smarta sect, which is coming from Shankara, the tradition of Shankaracharya, because there were within his world competing, not even like his fight and dealing with Buddhism of his time, that's another thing, but even within, in order to properly deal with a competitive religion that he had to deal with, part of his historical reality, he had to clean up the idea within Hinduism itself. Hinduism, house divided can't stand amongst itself type idea, right? And so Hinduism was known primarily sectarianly by 5 sects, right? The Shaktas, the Vaishnavas, the Shaivites, the Ganapatyas, and the Sauras, the worshippers of Shakti, or the goddess, worshippers of Shiva, worshippers of Vishnu, the worship of Ganesha, and the worshippers of the sun. These are the 5 competing. Nowadays, the Ganapatyas and the Sauras have been absorbed. Everybody worships the sun, everybody worships Ganesha. We don't have like a separate sect so much anymore, right? Everybody's chanting Gayatri, all the different sects chant Gayatri and worship the sun. Everybody has Ganesha in their temples and homes, right? It already got absorbed, right? But these 5 competing things these are very much competing, right? Vishnu Supreme, no. Shiva Supreme, no. All of you are fools. It's divine Shakti, and all of them are nothing without Shakti. Shakti is like then there's one verse Shankaracharya quotes: Shiva, Vishnu, Ganesha. Who has seen them? Right. I had one sannyasi tell me they've taken helicopter. Now there's helicopter trips to Kailash. There's no Shiva and Parvati there. Foolishness, right? But the sun, that we see every day, that's the real God. This is you could also dismiss all religion, all these fanciful ideas. The sun's real. That's the real God. The Saudiya tradition is the only thing that can be proven. You can even now you can have this type of fight, right? But so Shankaracharya developed this Panchayatana. Yatana, this is the worship of the 5 deities, right? We say, so Vishnu, he actually, their form of puja is on the same tree. We actually have this here next to on the shrine, the bottom layer of the shrine, there's a little throne by the water pot, by the ghat, right? And it has 5 stone deities, right? Or aniconic deities, right? They're not images. There's a Shalagram Shila, right? There's a Narmada Lingam, Shiva Lingam. There's a red stone from the Sone River that represents, Shalagram is Vishnu, the Narmada is Shiva, the red stone from the Sone River is Ganesha. There's a crystal stone, right, that's Surya, the sun, and there's a meteorite, a metallic meteorite that represents Shakti, right, Devi, right? So in one thing, you're worshiping the 5. And of course, we're Shaktas, so we put Devi in the middle, naturally, that's our focus. But we also worship the other ones, right? And the Shaivites will put Shalagram in the center, and they rearrange according to traditional sculpture. Yeah, the Vaishnavas put Vishnu in the middle, and Shaivas put Shiva in the middle, and still worship the other one. This is the form of puja that Shankaracharya preached. Right, some people attribute to him, but there's verses even about, of course, that's made. I'm not clear enough right now to defend the age of the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam as prior to or after Shankara. To be honest, I can't think of it right now. But even like in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's many states where to do any puja, first you have to worship the Panchdevatas. We do the same thing. Part of our puja, we first worship Guru, then we worship Ganesha, Surya, Narayan, Shiva, Durga, and then we worship Kali or Ramakrishna or Jesus or whatever the deity or saint we want to worship. We always first worship the 5 deities. That's a reference to this, right? But that means that these are all 5 faces of one supreme reality. The infinite Brahman is behind, and the face of that Brahman that we worship is the one that we love most, while still respecting the others. Right? It's a very big teaching. That's the source of the Ishta-devata tradition in Vedanta. Right? It entered with the appropriate sectarian adjustments, right, into the Bhakti traditions, which tends to be sectarian in nature, right? Where Vishnu, the Vaishnavas, so Vishnu supreme, right? Ishvara means Vishnu. Brahman is only Vishnu, right? But who's the Ishta-devata? Ram, Narasingha, right? Or I'm a devotee of Ram. I'm a devotee of Krishna. I'm a devotee of Narayan, or Satyanarayan. I'm a devotee of Hayagriva or Narasingha, right? So we have an Ishta-devata within the sectarian, even within a sect, that Vishnu is the only God, but there's many ways to approach him. Or we worship Shiva, but there's Mrityunjaya Shiva, there's Nataraj Shiva, there's Bhikshutana Shiva, there's Bhairava, like this. Or the Shakti, where Durga worshippers, Kali, Shivaji upasaks. Within the Shakti tradition, there's also the Ishta-devata idea, right? So even within a sectarian tradition, we have the Ishta-devata, and that takes the fanaticism away and gives freedom to the soul, the heart, to find its own appropriate way. But philosophically, in Vedanta, by Shankaracharya's worship of 5 deities, that gives the real meaning behind it. All the different names and forms, all the different deities, and we can expand it not just to 5. We can do 35 million deities. We can do the 5 main world religions, or the 30 subsidiary, secondary, not as popular. These are all ways and faces of the one Brahman manifesting itself. Or Swamiji says, then the true devotee will realize that he whose own ideal in life is worshipped in all ideals, by all sects, under all names, and through all forms. Jai Sri Ramakrishna, Jai Swami Vivekananda. Thank you for your time. Any questions or comments? We'll start RT in a minute or two, but you can leave nasty comments on my Facebook line if you like. I'll respond properly by deleting you and limiting who I listen to only people who agree with me. To show my open-mindedness by removing all opposing voices and opinions. It's weird how that works. It's very hard to get away from it. Very hard.
Something about Protestantism, about how it's natural progression is your truth is your truth and that truth, but it's getting kind of...
It's getting more and more. Actually, it's true. Sometime in the open mind, pretty soon it's like, there's truth behind everything. But pretty soon it becomes, it's your own truth.
Yeah.
I follow my own truth, right? And that's okay. You have to follow something. Usually what we mean by that is something that's our authentic view, where, but sometimes like your truth is not as, I listened to an interview with this rare video interview with that Schuon, what's his first name? I'm very bad lately. Fritzof Schuon, I think, or not Schuon, he's a famous perennial philosopher, one of the great thinkers, controversial character in his own way, but intellectually. And he asks, so the interviewer says, you're one of the most important thinkers of this perennial view. This is like the one truth and behind all religions. He goes, yes, it's true. He wasn't humble about it. And you've written more than 50 books on it. Yeah, that's true. I have written more than 50 books on it. And they're very intellectually convincing. Yes, actually correct. Right? He says, why aren't you popular? Why hasn't nobody heard of you? Of course, in the intellectual field, people have recognized him. But, I spent a whole summer painfully reading his work, and I forget his first name. right? It shows you he's not part of the intellectual culture, right? Where he says, oh, that's because I believe I'm not a relativist. I believe there is an absolute truth, and all the people who've tried who think they're presenting the perennialist view, the perennial philosophy view like that, actually are just they're starting with another idea that there is no absolute truth, and therefore anything you say is true as anything else. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what the scriptures. No, and that's why the language of religion is a language of absolutes, and that's the problem. That's why he said, "Oh, Jesus is the only way," or Islam is the only truth, or Vishnu is the highest deity, right? The language, because it's dealing with the absolute. The problem is we take the absolute and in the language of our limitations, we're assigning an absolute power or condition to our symbol for it, our not yet realized focus of it, right? But there's a reason where when you lose the absoluteness, it's not this relative. It's not everything. Sure, we personally and by society and by law, we can say everything goes. Everybody has a right to do with the thing, but not everything is. It doesn't mean that truth is relative. It means that people's realization of it may be relative. We may not know the whole thing, right? Maybe the true purest form of the truth. Maybe that's only known by Brahman. Swami Ramakrishna said, Brahman alone knows Brahman. The Saltal went to marry the depths of the ocean, and nothing came back. Nothing. Only the ocean knows how deep the salt ocean is. A salto goes in, it disappears. It's impossible, right? But say that there is no truth, there is no ocean, everything is fine, everything. That's also, it cheapens the whole thing, also, right? So one of the great lines from Swami Vivekananda says, our goal, our mission, right? Our call is to have everyone have faith in their own understanding of the truth, right? Something I may be worried about, and to try to help their understanding match the actual truth, right? Have people have faith in their understanding and feel it and be authentic and true to it, as well as help raise our view to more and more true, right? Because even to have faith in my religion is supreme, but there's faults. It's not perfect yet, right? So we'll bring it to the actual truth, preach the actual truth, as well as people's dignity as they're struggling through crooked ways and straight ways to reach that actual truth. And it's a very good point. Swamiji makes that point a lot here, so I'm glad you brought it out. So, yeah, very, yes. Okay, Jai Mahakali, Arati time. Now we'll do the only true religion by waving lights in front of the only true form of the highest, maybe not the only, but the highest form of divinity for sure. I'm joking, but I'm not joking.